Welcome. Welcome to Pacific Unitarian Universalist Church on the weekend of Thanksgiving. Thanks for coming here or tuning in or however you're checking us out. Got a number of things coming up. This starts into the first week of the month, which is always sort of busy. That means on Wednesday we have the Seekers group at 10 o'clock in the morning, usually right here in the sanctuary or out on the patio, 10 o'clock Wednesday. We have a men's group that's had a sporadic attendance. It'd be great if it was more regular, but we've had absolutely great discussions in the men's group on Thursday at 9:30 to 11. And then we're going to do a walk on Friday, which is at Trump National Golf Course. Well, listen, the public lands, okay? The church open to all people who like to walk. There's going to be a board meeting this coming Tuesday night, which is a little bit quicker than we normally have in December. Melissa, take it away. Tell us about that. Use mic 4. Should be on.
Okay. Oh,
there we go.
that works. Yay. So I'm your friendly neighborhood board representative, Melissa, and I wanted
president.
I'm president. I wanted to just let everybody know everyone is invited to board meetings. I think most people know that, but our regularly scheduled meeting on December 6th is now being rescheduled, and it will be this Tuesday evening on at 7 o'clock, so November 30th. The other big thing that's coming up, we're having our annual congregational meeting on December 12th, right here, right after service. Be here or be square. And the main purpose of that meeting is to look at the fall financial review and to share all the results with everybody and let you know the board's vision for the coming year. So I hope everyone can come. There will be a Zoom option too. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. It's on. It's fine. We're good. So we're still collecting kids' gifts for Christmas for disenfranchised kids with Rainbow Services. So there's a little box up here. We're bouncing between the different groups in San Pedro, Toberman. We've done stuff for Harboring of Faith. We're doing stuff with Rainbow Services. They're all good organizations. Rainbow Services focuses on domestic violence. A quick note, Dan Dempster was kind of our safety champion here a while back. So there's a couple quick tips. We might do a fire drill or something like that fairly soon. But if we were to evacuate for any, like a fire, for example, our first effort is to get to the parking lot, sort of gather around the tree over there. We're not going to drive out of the lot for the fear that fire trucks are going to be coming in and you will get blocked and hit. So we're going to do there. And then if that stabilizes, we go up to the elementary school. So that's just lock in your mind, parking lot to elementary school should the apocalypse happen. Hopefully it will not. There are hearing aids. There's a box back there. Melissa is looking at them. So if you struggle to hear, we sort of have to really vet whether this is going to be our option. The other options are more expensive, and we want to make sure that we've processed this and make sure everyone who has a shot at hearing the services can do that. Angela's dinners, these conversations, there's the next one coming up on December 12th, so you might put that in your brain. It's the last one. It's in the evening at 5 o'clock. This week, we also come back for our third gathering of the grief group at 1 on Wednesday. It's going to probably shift at the new year, but for it's the first and third Wednesdays of the month. It'll be at 1 o'clock for an hour. It usually meets for about an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes. We're still doing the blood drives, and the last Tuesday of the month, the 28th, there's going to be a blood drive here. You got to register with the Red Cross, but we haven't been mentioning that much, but it's a good thing to do. The book group has taken a little break. They're coming back in January to read the book called Circa, which is a kind of a Greek fantasy tale. It's kind of a feminist theme. And we also have pizza on Thursday. So lots cooking. We stopped to remember that this church is sitting on what was originally Tongva land. And I turned it over to Darcy, who's going to come up and read our chalice words while I light the chalice.
Hi there, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Chelsea's here. Yay! Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Okay. Nice. Beautiful day, right? Gorgeous out there. It's like 30 degrees in Boston right now. Let's take just a little breather, center ourselves a little bit. We draw ourselves together in this room from the busyness of our daily lives, the din and constraints of the everyday, the sort of ordinary, is set aside for this short time, important time to gather together. May each of us find an ear for our concerns and a voice that reunites us with our highest resolve. In this sacred space, may we visit the eternal and bring it wholly and newly into our lives. We gather together in our search for happiness, essentially, reclaim our souls, part of that process of being a whole human being, right? And that idea that Jefferson wrote, the pursuit of happiness has an inherently appealing quality to it. Don't you love the phrase, the pursuit of happiness? The very word happiness has this kind of friendly bounce to it, right? It seems like to speak of it is to what it is to have it, happiness. And that's our theme for today. So if Jefferson thought we had the right to fight to pursue it, although that was a limited vision at the time of who had that right, essentially, obviously. And today, like we were a detective in a noir novel, we employ those rights to go search out how we might most be happy. But that follows an opening hymn, 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are, a hymn built off of Rumi's words. Mumble along as safely as you can.
Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worship, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Nice, right? That was great. I'm going to invite our kids down for our children's moment. Come on down if you're young or young at heart. And Darcy and you can stay here. We need to stay apart.
Standing?
Okay. I think we might need to keep distance or we're going to echo. So this is a story of Hanukkah. Who knows what Hanukkah is?
It's essentially Christmas for some.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Hanukkah is technically Christmas, but just in a different way.
Heard from our red states.
Hanukkah a long time ago, a few people, when an entire village was low on oil and they had to use the entire lamp, and it lasted, I think, 9 days? 8. 7?
8, yeah, 8. Yeah, we're going to hear a little bit about that. You get a present, yeah. Okay, so we're going to tell this story, the Maccabees story with Tilda Baisley. It's called The Story of Hanukkah, so you'll hear that in poetic form, a little bit more fleshed out story.
Very much longer. At Hanukkah, we tell this story of ancient faithfulness and glory.
Of freedom lost and freedom won by Jews who knew what must be done.
The Greeks had gods, yes, more than one. God of sea, God of sun. Throw in a party, God for fun.
King Antiochus ruled the land. Bow down to them was his command.
And that's not all. I order you to dress and eat and act Greek too. No way, said every faithful Jew.
Sometimes change only takes a few who know what's right and then do it too.
But Antiochus had great power. When they refused, his mood turned sour.
Jerusalem, he snarled and frowned, will desecrate their holy ground.
Put statues of our gods around, stamp out the traitors where they're found.
Some Jews gave in, and some Jews fled. Then one Jew, Matthias, said,
To your idols I won't pray, your laws aren't mine, I won't obey. He drew his sword and he got away.
Sometimes it only takes a few who knows what's right and do it too.
But Matthias said, I'm old. We need a leader strong and bold.
I have 5 sons, whom should I choose? And he conducted interviews. Jonathan is plenty smart.
And Simon, he knows a martial art. The other two, they'll do their part, but Judah, what a heart.
He called to Judah at first light, our farmers, shepherds, you'll unite.
Deep in the mountains out of sight, with patience, teach them how to fight, then lead attacks through dark of night.
Said Judah, eager, brave, and bright, count on me to do what's right. With all my heart, with all my might.
Sometimes it only takes a few who knows what's right and do it too.
So Judah led the scrappy band to fight for freedom through the land. Now all admired his command.
He's like a hammer in our hand. So Maccabee was his new name. Maccabee stands for hammer.
The armies of the king was strong. They thought they'd win.
But they were wrong. The Maccabees fought hard and long.
King Antiochus finally said, enough bloodshed.
Then Judah's men saw just ahead Jerusalem with ruins spread, and though they thought they'd won,
They moaned and said, all is lost, this place is dead.
Did Judah wail and hang his head? No, he told them all instead.
sometimes it only takes a few who knows what's right and do it too.
Our temple is a royal mess, but we have come to repossess, to get the idols out of here.
I missed my cue, said Judah. I see the courtyard's gone to weeds. Who'd like to plant some flower seeds?
Someone called, look what I found, our broken altar on the ground.
And Judah said, who's good with bricks? These are problems we can fix.
Enthusiasm filled the air. His people, they scurried everywhere.
A new menorah, aren't we clever? Its holy light will burn forever.
A search for oil was underway. Bad news spoiled their holiday. This jug will last for just one day.
The people cried, but it takes 8 to make more oil, and it's too late.
You're right, said Judah. We can't wait. Use what we have, that little bit. They all agreed the old was lit.
The next day, it burned like new. The third and fourth and fifth day, too. For 3 more days, their wonder grew.
Free to worship without fear. They said, remember every year that a miracle has happened here.
And like the brave Judah, they all knew sometimes it only takes a few who know what's right
and
do it too.
Right. Yeah. So the Jewish people had their country taken over, and then the people who took it over, the Greeks, went in and basically desecrated. They put up their own statues, which was kind of an insult to the Jews who were very loyal to their God. And then they eventually kind of had a guerrilla war, and they were able to win back the country, and they cleaned out the temple. And the eight days of the oil, there really wasn't that much, but it kept burning, and that's thought of as the Hanukkah miracle. And yes, you get gifts, and it's close to Christmas. They're kind of linked, aren't they? Yeah. Eight. Yeah. Thanks for breaking down the theology. All right. Let's sing out our kids with our singing out our kids song.
Go with wonder, go to meet a brand new day. Learn to see the light within you as we send you on your way.
We're going to have a centering hymn that isn't in our bulletin. It's number 221. It's Light One Candle, which is a kind of a classic Hanukkah song.
Light one candle for the Maccabee children, with thanks that their light didn't die. Light one candle for the pain they endured when the right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. But light one candle for the wisdom to know the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through the love and our tears. Light one candle for the strength that we need to never become our own foe. Light one candle for those who are suffering the pain we learned so long ago. Light one candle for they all believe in anger won't tear us apart. And light one candle to bring us together with peace as the song in our heart. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, it shines through the love and our tears.
Now time for joys and concerns, and time to share what's good and bad, hard, sweet, To the creating, changing face of the present, some call God, others spirit. As I said before, Luke Skywalker uses the word the Force. To the pronoun that is so elusive as we are neglectful, we lift up our hearts at this time in this space. We are wise that empathy for those outside ourselves is the foundation of morality. In that wisdom, we seek understanding of others. Mindful, as Paul noted, that being either a foot or a hand or an arm, we are of one body. And we look beyond ourselves for connection and meaning. Understanding, as America's own native people said, that to pluck one thing from nature is to feel its pull on its connection to everything else, we train ourselves on interdependence. Being that we are wise that at the end of the mystic's journey is deep connection, we hope to be a restful place in the universe here. We are one of many speckled, sacred buildings spread across this land, engaged in a very similar act today. We seek that this weekly worship space and the community that fills it be a space of happiness for those that live out their days within our walls, and an increase in happiness in those that never touch this campus. We've entered the season of beginning to envision our future here, talking about where we're at, the halfway point, a mid-semester break essentially, to envision what we might do moving forward. I envision that we all hold and pray that we take the goodwill that exists here and the joy that we've made it through COVID, and we hold the idea that our institutional structures need to grow. We need to fill in those spaces that make up our work groups and committees so that we can really earn and be the place we need to be here. We begin to talk about all that we can be, a greater variety of colors and voices, and stronger. Green in an environmental sense, and pink in a LGBTQ sense, and more BIPOC all the time, more diverse, more the way the world should be. Let's hold that vision and hold ourselves to that as we turn the year. May the resolution be that Pacific Unitarian Church grows bigger and stronger and more joyful, deeper and more potent. Take that to prayer.
There's a book called Stumbling Upon Happiness, where Daniel Gilbert quoted some big thinkers, some wonderful thinkers. Sigmund Freud says, "The question of the purpose of human life has been raised countless times. It has never yet received a satisfactory answer, and perhaps does not admit of one. We will therefore turn to the less ambitious question of what men show by their behavior to be the purpose and intention of their lives. What do they demand of life and wish to achieve in it? The answer to this can hardly be in doubt. They strive after happiness. They want to become happy and to remain so." Blaise Pascal, who was a French mathematician, but I think he was all kinds of other things too, theologian. He concurred. He said, "All men and women seek happiness. This is without exception. Whatever different means they employ, they all tend towards this end. The will never takes the least step but to this object. This is the motive of every action of every man," he said. And perhaps by experience, most convincingly, is Anne Frank, who says, "We all live with the objective of being happy. Our lives are all different, and yet they're all the same."
Thank you, Darcy. For the sake of clarity, I think we should accept Freud, Pascal, and Frank's collective premise that we seek happiness as the working hypothesis for how we live and what we do. Seems kind of self-evident. Be hard to challenge that. Wanting to be happy is one of the few things we might even dare to be an irrefutable part of human nature. Freud's observation that humans search for happiness is probably the most straightforward thing he ever said. And the best part of Freud's statement is that, as clear as it is that he said it, we all know that he's just as clear about the difficulty of achieving it. We're all with him, right? If you're anywhere towards the center of the bell curve of whether you are happy or not, you have to probably pause before you answer that question, I suspect. If I asked you if you were happy, you might need a second. And then you might even doubt the accuracy of your answer a little. Happiness is all at once hard to find, define, and hold on to, which is a little bit weird. If it's kind of sort of the most shared assumption about what it is that we want, and if the challenge to describe, never mind, find it, and we all get fidgety at about a minute 14 into the sermon, I better get going. So if our premise that happiness stands, we would be best in a modern sense as investigators and scientists to have to determine that our chief suspects in the pursuit of happiness would have to be the behaviors that most people choose to engage in to get this elusive but essentially shared goal. In order to figure out how we might get a more consistent version of happiness, I've invited the author of the book, Daniel Gilbert, onto my imaginary case. You see an image of him up there. You might see him, he was on a bunch of ads in the last 5 or 10 years for investment firms a few years back. I thought I would stick this in the frame of an old noir movie and encourage us for the rest of the sermon to think in black and white. As a fun aside, I'm slightly inspired to do this because I think Drew Davis looks like a detective from one of those old films, so I think of Drew in this pursuit. Okay, so our pursuit begins with Professor Gilbert walking into my sort of detective's office with an armful of studies and a deep respect for the difficulty of finding the source of happiness. I want you to imagine him doing that, and he and I in the office start brainstorming up a list in order to find happiness. We go through this list of things that people do to get happy or to find it. I say to Daniel, people try to find love and surround themselves with those that love them. Gilbert marks this down on his little sheet of paper, and he adds, try to get more money, get more things. Sure, they do, I say. I add, they look for more power and status. And they also choose, ironically, to give up those pursuits for a simpler, more comfortable life. Good, Gilbert says, you're onto it, excellent. He adds, people also ingest drugs and alcohol, both strong and mild, prescribed and otherwise, to find or get happy. Right, I say, and I add that they also redefine reality, accurately or not, to realms outside which that can be seen. And by that, I mean they reframe their perspective, they get religious, they have faith. Gilbert and I decide to start testing our most tantalizing leads. The most immediate fun thing to do is to catch a cheap flight to Vegas in search of the best place to witness people try to, in a surefire, quick way, get happy. We watch them try to break the casino, ingest the right drug, as Dr. Freud would well understand, to find Mr. or Mrs. Right, or at least Mr. and Mrs. Right now. Walking by the fountains and the wide sidewalks, Gilbert and I discussed that there's sort of a pulse in the air here, isn't there? We, without much effort, concur that the route to happiness Vegas offers may in fact be the quickest way to get happy. And with the many shiny things that are there to engage with and play with, and there's a joy and levity we can find ourselves getting caught up in as we're in this side of environment. However, on day 3 of our observations and tally sheets, we're led to the conclusion that the stressed out and despondent faces of so many people lead us to believe that drugs and the excitement and the games of chance and pretty things that can dazzle do not appear a certain way of staying happy. Standing in the neon glare, I note in my little detective book, it's worth noting that people driven hard enough to find happiness that they pursue these short-term solutions long past the point that they appear to be even fun. Gilbert says, okay, the quick fix connections of fast money and cheap love may be eliminated as a good and true source of happiness, but we still need to check out the happiness between more stable money and resources. I pretend in a tough, top cop guy voice, let's check out the next suspect. Gilbert and I, trench coats on, magnifying glasses in hand, decide the next way to test the connection between happiness and money is to visit a variety of poor and wealthy communities and nations and cultures. We fly around the globe. We hop planes to Ethiopia and Dubai. We stop in at some of the mansions in Malibu. We visit the Philippines and Chicago's middle-class suburbs, just to pick some middle-class suburbs. From the beautiful streets of Malibu with the palm trees to the crowded ones in Manila, we take it all in, eyes peeled. We wander talking to people, the diligent Professor Gilbert making notes, dropping his gaze back into his briefcase with all his notes. On one of our plane flights home, I say, Dan, this is a tough one, but what my eye and my gut tells me is that many of the people that live in poor nations truly do appear a little bit less content and secure. I'm going to go ahead and say less happy than those who live in moderately wealthy nations. This is, of course, subjective and varied and, a bold generalization, of course. Gilbert interrupts me. He says, the data does loosely support your common sense observation. He says those that spend time meeting their basic needs or bailing themselves out of one crisis after another don't even self-identify as being as happy as those with more security do. However, when you look at even the self-reporting surveys of those in wealthy nations, the facts support that the wealthy are not markedly or significantly happier than those who have even their most basic needs met. Gilbert, looking over a slew of studies, as he is prone to do, that clutter the table back in the office, he says that the facts report a correlation, a loose one, between one's happiness and one's basic needs being met. And that after one reaches economic stability, there's a diminishing correlation between happiness, connected, and increasing material wealth. To which I respond, so believing you can buy your way out of sick, tired, and hungry and scared is not entirely an illusion. No, my smart professor friend suggests. One might suggest the conclusion that from our tour and the background research done on money and happiness is that money appears to keep us, having some at least, from some of the conditions that that create unhappiness, without granting ourselves the complete ability to attain it. Does that make sense? I scratch in my little notebook. Although there is undeniably pervasive evidence that money does not buy happiness, people of all economic backgrounds still hunger after money. Why is that? Gilbert says the next source of investigation on our happiness tour would be finding romantic love. Romantic love is nearly a surefire way to get, if not stay, happy. Gilbert responds, yes, if the person you've tagged with that title doesn't initially make you happy, you've probably picked the wrong horse. I say, Dan, let's assume for a minute that people are not always picking the wrong person, and that there's at least a good percentage of people who fall in love with and get married to at least someone who's close to the right person. That seems reasonable, he says. Then, I say, let's see whether finding the right person in the security of partnership, and while we're at it, the kids that often come with it, lead to happy or make us happy. Okay, Gilbert says. That's the choice most people at one point in their life make. And he begins, we walk these suburban middle streets classes, we're peeking in the windows of families of all different shapes and sizes. Having surveyed the scene, we stop, we're sitting on a curb under a street light, we open up our laptops, we formulate ideas, we're reviewing the data of all we've seen. It seems, I say, that the closest thing to a conclusion here is that marriage and families differ and their ability to bring happiness to those involved. But Gilbert responds, look at what the combination of these 4 studies I brought to the table here. Look what they say. He scatters these studies out on the sidewalk. They basically show us that happiness follows from at least some form of a pattern. Gilbert holding up these 4 studies, he says, that concur that in some people in the West, like painting with the broadest of brushes, self-identify that their sense of happiness follows a pattern. Oh, all right. Happiness goes down almost immediately from the time people get married. And then general up again when the kids are in elementary school. And then down again when the kids become teens. And then up again as the nest empties. So the most common feeling of empty nest syndrome, we both chuckle then, is giddiness. Gilbert chimes in. There's more. Check this out. It is true, parents record a trustworthy pleasure, I believe we can call happy, when they look back wistfully or forward, one or the other, with the glee at cooing babies and wedding days and graduations and Susie's first time at bat. Yes, I say. But in the day-to-day, moment-to-moment, Gilbert goes on, people actually taking care of or spending time with their children, and his study holds up the pleasure of being with their children somewhere between housework and exercise. He goes on. In sum, the evidence reveals people generally describe their kids as a great source of joy and happiness, even more a source of pride and purpose. But just not right now. Gilbert says, smiling, right, I follow. So looking at him, looking for confirmation, it won't alone being having a family and kids that make you happy. It seems that way, Gilbert responds. We find ourselves walking by a synagogue on the street, which prompts me to say, the traditional answer, at least in the Western world, is to find happiness rooted in our intimate connection to a more perfect existence. I'm struggling for the words, so as I talk to him, a heavenly realm, a more divine place that many of our religious traditions that we either come from, say we can achieve, or that is the source of it all. Gilbert adds, we seem to sort of with our eyes and with a sense of faith, we can sort of taste is what you're looking for, the taste that eternal. The traditional religious answer to this question as we stroll past the synagogue is that our problem in finding this happiness or holding on to it is that we're built in a matter that's initially distracted by more worldly concerns. That is the way religious people sort of think of it. We're corrupted, so to speak, is part of the language and the world as it takes shape and as who we are. Gilbert asks, or says, speaking in the form of a question, in this mindset, then, true happiness is built on cultivating a deeper connection with this true eternal realm, right? Yes, I respond. Gilbert says back quite clearly, this could be true. It is, of course, hard to test this, right? Let's put it off as one side to the table here, as something that's not eliminated as a suspect, but difficult to essentially assess. I like that, I say. There's a deep, rich thing about religion making and getting you happy, but it is hard to test. We return to the office. I throw my feet up on the desk. We're a little frustrated. Gilbert stands over me amidst all these files and data from the studies. Exasperated, I sort of turn to him and I say, okay, we're starting again. If we all want to be happy, and nothing people seem to choose consistently leads to this happiness, like a detective on CSI, right? Gilbert nods and follows. Something is wrong. Right, I say musingly. Gilbert says, we found out that as we have suspected all along, that behaviors and the pursuits and the things that people do or gather around them to make them happy isn't the same thing as happiness itself. Yeah, we both nod. We could at least add that those with enough resources and political freedom to pursue happiness, that is, given that we're talking about the pursuit of it. Yes, Dan says, good point. This really, let's deal only with those people, just to eliminate our search, who have the wherewithal and resources and aren't in immense suffering to pursue the things that we think are worth pursuing. Gilbert begins to nod slowly. He has this wry, enlightened smile crosses his face. In an instant, he begins to shuffle through some of his papers, clearly looking for things. He's pasting things on the wall like a maniac. He's frantic. He's a little excited. He mutters under his breath repeatedly, we think will make us happy. We think will make us happy. The things we pursue, he's mumbling to himself. Clearly, he's on to something. I step out for coffee to let the genius do his work. When I return from the break, he has a bigger wry smile on his face. I got it. Or at least I partially think I got it, the professor says. He says, when we look at all the studies we've done and the way our brains and the world works, it seems there's an important thing to know about happiness that we often miss. What? I say, quit holding out. Sit down, he says. This is a bit odd. We are much, much less likely, and by that, he says, I mean we are much, 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 much less likely and capable of making the choices that we think will make us happy than we do or will. Okay, I say, a bit puzzled. Can you say that again? He shows me something he's written. We are much less likely, and by that, he's repeating his words, we are much, much less likely and capable of making choices that will actually make us happy than we think we will or we do. Okay, I'm still a little confused. Gilbert says the future is far too unpredictable for our capacity to predict it to secure our happiness. Huh, okay, that's understandable, I get that. Our skills, he says, in predicting, never mind navigating our future of what will make us happy is really just too weak. Gilbert running around looking at his different charts. Look at all the data. Our happiness, which we're inclined to think we wish will be found in the thing, new love, exciting events, family, all those things, seem to be more dependent in actuality on the pleasure of aiming than the getting. Huh, I shrug. Happiness is built more on the hope than the get, Gilbert says. The studies, when compiled with the happiness question in mind, tend to reveal an interesting thing. It seems for our brains, it is simply gratifying to exercise control. I twist my head like a dog, trying to sort of capture where he's headed. Gilbert proceeds, the act of steering one's own life, like a captain might have the pleasure of steering his or her boat, is itself a source of pleasure. Okay, I shrug. He says, struggling to make the point clearer, regardless of what one's port of call or aim might actually be, whatever anyone might choose to pursue, the rudder in our own hand feels good. We like control, I state, nodding. Yeah, but that's not all. Gilbert says we enjoy also thinking about the future. Holding up his laptop, he says, take a look at this study, he says. People, when they're asked whether they want to eat a fancy French meal, now, soon, or much later, most people choose about a week away. Huh. Gilbert says, we in the scientific community have come to believe that they do this because it offers time for the pleasure of looking forward to the meal. We instinctively, innately, come to terms with the fact that our pleasure in our brains is there when we look forward to something. And we do so when we put something out there and aim at it, we extract more pleasure from it than just experiencing that event. He's on a roll. I sort of stay out of his way. It's been here assessed, pointing to a graph taped to the water cooler I've got up there, that our brains spend about 12% of the time thinking about the future. He's got tape now on the blinds of the office. He's got this written. It's also clear that our brains have a proclivity to imagine good things happening to us in the future much more than they do. Much more realistically than any expectations in the future generally delivers. I say. He says this because our brains are smart about their own pursuit of pleasure and happiness. It's sort of a conspiracy of selective memory and optimism that causes us to fill our photo albums with birthday parties and not breakups. That's all I can say. I'm intrigued. I agree. It's in our brain's self-interest and tendency to think good things are more likely to happen to us than actually do. Dan, someone told me once I tell him that happiness is found in the waiting room for happiness. I never really got that to now. He injects our memory, which both the courts and magicians have long ago proven untrustworthy. And our imagination about what is to come, which, by the way, is forced to deal with literally tons of missing information that the future hasn't brought to us yet, is forced to leave out and fill in important information about what we are going to want in the future. We tend to project the present wants and ways much more into the future than exist. Think about this, he says, holding up fingers in a question. Who says I will be so psyched when I can drive? Dan turns to me. Are you psyched every day that you can drive? No, I am not psyched, I say back to him, making my own digital quotations. But I wouldn't want that taken away. Exactly, Gilbert says, eyebrows and fingers up. In summary, Dan attempts. Here's what I think we've gotten to. Our happiness, which we're inclined, even disposed to think is attached to the thing we're aiming at, seems dependent upon the pleasure of the control we have in aiming it in our lives. I respond. So you're saying that we care a lot more about the future than we care about the future when we've arrived at it. Okay. And the future we fought to have in the future, we don't care about once it's arrived to a large degree. Yes, Gilbert says, in our pursuit of creating happiness for ourselves, we misremember the past, we misperceive the present, and we misimagine the future. So the real answer, I say, is as we've suspected, is that no thing will make us happy. But now that the deconstruction is complete, I add, what's next? What you're telling me is that our brains sort of fool us into believing that we might want this or that thing or that lifestyle or something in the future when we realistically cannot know what we will want in the future. But I still feel compelled to return to the plaguing question of why people chase things that seem so inconsistently to yield future happiness. Gilbert hesitates and says, the fact seems to suggest that we do not in reality find true. Some of what we want, we won't want. Our goals provide us with a certain form of bad training. Say more, I respond. Gilbert says, I think we've all experienced that we shoot for transient pleasures, and like the sage might say, looking for unlimited happiness in limited things is a dead end. I say I'm absolutely convinced, at least theoretically, the next material thing or pretty person around the corner is not going to make me happy for any length of time, but it is the first immediate thing I want to turn to. And Gilbert says, the first thing we all need to know here in America particularly is that a society tuned to insatiable desire for commercial purposes, it's hard to find happiness because the search is always represented. For example, for our economy to thrive, at least in the traditional ideas about what a thriving economy is, involves the cultivation of the illusion that we're all under, that more money and stuff will buy us happiness. I postulate that we are, you mean via advertisements and the other stories we're telling ourselves, presenting ourselves with constantly moving targets. Moving targets, that's nicely phrased, he says. But money is not the only thing that brings with it its own power of conviction. Some of the science about partnering in kids rest on its own wheel of reinforcement. Something like that, Gilbert says, but don't be too cynical. Happiness can come from the pleasure that a lot of money and good relationships do bring. And I intercede, might bring or not bring. Yes, you've got it, but could bring, he says. Then I suppose, there seems an unreliable happiness that best pursued by a shift in consciousness. Let's return to that religious question. Gilbert says, you're the theologian. It's a spiritual truth so many traditions encourage us not to get too caught up in the world. He says it might be wise to suggest to your parishioners that the next time they think about a new place or a thing that will make them happy, to remind them that it only might make them happy. Got it, I say. It makes me wonder, I say, that my grandfather, one of the happiest people I know, might have kept his own sort of Sherlock Holmes magnifying glass controlled on what he really wanted to make sure that what he really wanted didn't get out of hand, and to take control about pursuing things that he could actually achieve. I turned to my detective book. In the end, it's quite obvious that after pursuing happiness by following its most obvious leads, down the beautiful boulevards and lavish homes to pursue it, hunting the footsteps into romantic getaways, peeking into the windows of homes filled with brooding kids, we find strong evidence that happiness does not essentially live there. It lives to the degree that our subjective realities and trained collective hopes hold those things to be satisfying. And that is as close as we're going to get today, Gilbert says. Much as we might quietly wish to chase it elsewhere, happiness, if anywhere, lives between our ears and underneath our chest, where our attitude meets our emotional life. Elementary, my dear Gilbert, I say. Jefferson and the boys had it right. Happiness was something we had the right to pursue. Maybe they were on to something. Amen. Yeah. Darcy's going to introduce us to our offertory, I think. No? Oh, it's after. Wait a minute, I'm throwing us off. Okay, give generously. Yeah, I missed my cue. Sorry about that.
You mean that next thing I ordered from Amazon isn't going to make me happy?
No, that will. That's the one thing.
Severin, I was remembering when you led the choir in singing your arrangement of Pharrell Williams, Because I'm Happy. That would have been perfect for that, so today. We'll get back to that eventually. Would you be silly with me? We're going to read the affirmation of ingratitude. No, that's ingratitude. Okay, here we go. Let us be resentful when we are asked to give, for many do not have that obligation. Let us feel bitter when we are asked to share our gifts, for we are empowered by our privilege. And let us be reluctant to voice our needs, for fear that we have to admit our frailties and risk losing our sense of superiority.
Makes a point, doesn't it? There you go. All right. Our closing hymn is Oh, I Woke Up This Morning. You can hum along as you know the tune.
Woke up this morning with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm walking and talking with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind, it stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I was singing and praying with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Well, I woke up this morning with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Let's do it.
This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us together forever, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity.
I'm a big fan of that unity. May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. Shalom, salam, namaste, and blessed be. And now our service truly begins, or at least it should.
Oh, at the